Hello, Paul Johnson for Film Obsessive. I'm here today with Holly M. Kaplan. Holly is writer, director, and producer of the short film titled Sunflower Girl. It's going to appear this week as part of the Woodstock Film Festival in New York. So I'd like to welcome you, Holly, to Film Obsessive, and just ask you, what's it going to mean to you to screen your film there?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I'm really excited for our Hudson Valley premiere at the Woodstock Film Festival. I've spent, some time up here in the Hudson Valley. I'm here right now, and I'm really excited to share it with the community here, because it's such a, important event for the area.
It's a lovely film. I should have you talk a little bit about what the narrative is and does before we go further.
Yeah, so Sunflower Girl is a short film. It's a narrative film, and it actually takes place in New York City, which is where I grew up. And the protagonist is a 13-year-old girl who she's kind of like a novice skateboarder, and she is kind of getting into this new hobby that her mom really disapproves of, and she has a crush on this skater boy that is, I guess, like her peer, at school in her neighborhood in New York City, and she really wants to skate with him, and she happens to run into him while she's doing an errand for her sister, who she has to look after, and she has to decide if she wants to sacrifice her, family responsibilities to hang out with her crush finally, or be a good daughter.
It's really a charming performance from your lead actor. The film is shot in a way that just really harkens back to memories, I think, of youth that I really appreciate. Is this something that just kind of came to you out of the blue? Did you script it out of personal experience or something you witnessed, or entirely from your own imagination?
Yeah, I think like it's definitely both. I would say like I feel like kind of like half and half of memories and half of like imagination based off of like experiences of growing up. Like I love that, people like what you're saying, like they're watching it and they really remember their memories of growing up. Like I feel like that's like what I think is like the best thing for me to hear, because that's kind of like the inspiration, of the film. I was like walking around my neighborhood. I grew up in like downtown, and this was like during COVID quarantine, like in New York City, where there was, nobody around at all. Like it was, those videos on the internet of it being like completely desolate, like that was real. Like it was really like scary, and I would just like walk around where I used to go to school, and I remembered all these kids who I like grew up with, and these just like kind of crazy things that would happen, like just being a kid in New York City, and how only that would happen if you grew up there. Like none of this could happen anywhere else. Like these kind of funny stories of that age of being a preteen and getting up to trouble, or going to the like deli after school. And I just kind of thought about how I didn't think of that as something interesting when I was growing up, because I thought that was just life. And yeah, and I was thinking, actually that is, now that I've lived in several places and I had just moved back to New York, I was like, that's actually like a pretty distinct experience of growing up here. And it reminded me of just after school. And then I started having the idea of Rosie, the protagonist, as a skater, which like I skated, but I wasn't like as good as the boys, in the film, who are really great skateboarders. And I think that was the idea of just kind of wanting to fit into like these people that you don't necessarily fit in with, but you really like at that age want to, appeal to like certain groups of people. So it was like based off of like the kind of universal experience that we have of that feeling at that age, and then also like what if I was like that cool girl who did like fit in with them? Like what would happen if I actually hung out with them? So I think that was kind of the made up part.
Absolutely. And I want to ask too, so you were shooting post-COVID then, or during, if I mean, if we even are post-COVID, but you were shooting largely after the lockdowns when the streets were opened a little bit and you still had to do like some safety procedures, I guess, for your cast and crew.
Yeah, so I wrote the script. Well, actually, so I started actually ideating the script. I went back in my notes recently for another piece, a local article about like the New York City aspects, and I had to kind of look back. When did I write my first like note? Like when was my first idea? And I remember I was walking around. I wrote it actually April 2020, like literally a month after lockdown. But then I didn't start writing the script till 2021, which was like kind of vaccines and like lockdown being lifted. And then we didn't shoot till 2022, where we had a SAG film and they had strict protocol back then. And that's why like in all our behind the scenes photos, like we all have masks on. And it was, we had like a COVID compliance officer still at that point there. That was still a requirement for shooting. So we did have like COVID like department and like testing and all of like the protocol that, you know, they do for like union productions. So it was like people still going back to work at that time, but it was still like, you know, COVID department protocol and stuff.
And you also have a highly specific look to the film that I just wanted to ask you to talk a little bit about. It's shot in a narrower aspect ratio than most viewers are used to these days. The color grading seems like highly specific to me to want to kind of evoke memories. Could you talk a little bit about those elements of the process? I mean, I think they're very integral to making your film seem very much like a felt memory.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I feel like that's like I'm glad that it felt like a memory because I feel like that's exactly like the feeling of it that we were trying to go for. That like I worked very closely with my cinematographer, Michael Kong, and I think we originally we shot actually in regular, you know, 16:9 ratio for the digital portions because that's just how the camera, you know, the aspect ratio is for when you are filming, which is good because it allowed us to, in post with my editor Haley, to, you know, letterbox like close in on the 4:3 ratio that we did like set and kind of, you know, save ourselves in certain shots, like to basically allow us to reposition the center of the shot in the edit for the 4:3 ratio. And that was definitely like purposeful. Like originally I had always gone into it like wanting like 4:3, even though I knew we had to shoot wider. Because I was think because of like growing up, you know, as a millennial, like when the TVs were full screen or whatever, you know, that was just like that was like the norm, you know. And I think like that was trying to relate to what I we were all like used to, you know, seeing, and it helps like hone in on this idea of like a narrow, like a memory, or like what you're saying, like it's like closing in something. I don't know, it's like very subliminal. Like it feels like when it's wider, like I still like, you know, scope films, but it does give this idea of like it being in someone's mind or something. And I think that was like what I want, especially with like the Super 8 stuff and the color too. Like we worked with a colorist from Company 3, and we kind of were specific where the digital footage had to be warm. And then the Super 8 stuff was cold, so that there was like a difference that you can like tell the difference between the two, but having it still like a very stylized look.
And just another key element of the production, of course, is your cast who is excellent throughout. You mentioned that it's a SAG film. Can you talk a little bit about casting the film and in particular your protagonist, who's really wonderful?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Malaya is so talented. She's amazing. And yes, she's SAG. And she it was interesting casting, like trying to find the protagonist because it's such a like specific character, you know, and we we went through a lot of methods to cast our protagonists. Like initially, we did a lot of backstage and online casting calls, and we had a lot of local actors audition. But it was kind of tricky with the age range. She's supposed to be a preteen, and a lot of people that we got were a little older. They were maybe like a teenager, like they were like 15 or 16, and I think like I was realizing it's harder to portray like the script, like the story idea. If they're too old, it feels like the stakes are not high enough for them to me. And I wanted it to be like preteen specifically, just because that's like really her character was like when she's really confronting these feelings for the first time. And when you're older, it's like you kind of already have gone through those feelings. And so then ended up actually I saw her in a film I went to see that summer called After Yang. And my producer and casting director were like, okay, so we have all these people, like if we could name someone, like so we can just have like anybody else, because like widen the pool. And I said, well, I saw this movie and like she was really good and I don't know if she's like the right age because she was very young in it, but maybe she's older now. And they reached out to her team on IMDb Pro actually, and yeah, then they sent her the script and she auditioned, and she actually like wrote the song that plays at the end of the movie in her and played it on ukulele in her audition tape. So it was like no one else did that, and I was like really blown away by like how talented she was. And then she wrote like this whole song that was like the whole idea of the film. Like she understood the character completely, and that was like how we cast her. So it's kind of a crazy story.
That is awesome. How could you not
Yeah.
give her the job? But this song is lovely, and I know she is talented as an actor and as a vocalist as well. I mean, I've seen that in her notes. But I was going to compliment you on that song and just ask where it came from, and now I know the answer to that. So you're making a short film. And it was a year ago, 2 years ago, you were one of the recipients of the Latino Lens Narrative short film incubator that helped with this particular film. Is that right? Could I just have you talk a little bit about the assistance that a grant like that kind of gives you in terms of your freedom as a filmmaker?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so that's kind of like the reason why like the timeline of when we made the film happened. So I had wrote the film like I was saying in 2021, like I finished the script, but we were submitting that script that I finished in 2021 to grants for about a year, like a lot of different grants. And then it wasn't until 2022 that like a year later we like got this grant. And it was just so amazing. I like, yeah, so the reason why the whole film was be able to be made was really because of like this amazing grant from Nalip and Netflix. And they gave us a lot of money to make it, and they gave us a camera package
Yeah.
and like mentorship. So there was a lot of, as a this was like my first film as a solo director, so this was kind of like my first official project out of not being in school or anything, like being a professional filmmaker. So this was like perfect for me as like having the mentorship, having the funds available. And for me, like this is perfect, like having all that assistance, because as someone who I don't really like, I really commend people who do crowdfunding. Like I think that's great, and especially if people get it funded, like I'm always so amazed and happy for them. For me, like I just don't want to do crowdfunding for myself. So like I'll put in all the work to write essays, and go on interviews for grants. But I commend the crowdfunding people, but I am very happy and grateful that we got this amazing grant that helped us, dream bigger for this project, basically was what it did.
Congratulations to you for it. And I think a lot of people don't always realize just how much work is involved. Whatever path one takes to raise funds for filmmaking, it's always a challenge, and it always requires a lot of work from a person who may be coming at that really just with simple intention. I just want to write and direct. But to get off the ground, you've got to, like you've done here, produce, and that often means fundraising for the project as well. Where and when in the future, besides the Woodstock Film Festival, can people look forward to seeing Sunflower Girl?
Yeah, it's really like kind of been a crazy month this month. This month is like that happens to be like the most festivals that we've like ever had for the past year. I think it's over 10, honestly, this month. So it's gonna be at Woodstock on Friday, and then it's gonna be in New York City again at the Real Sisters Film Festivals in Brooklyn. And then I'm actually going to Germany because it's going to be at the Hof International Film Festival. Um,
I didn't.
and then yeah, and it's going to be online, so if you're not going to be in Germany or New York, for Americans only, from the Silicon Valley Asian Pacific Film Festival, until the 27th of October, so it'll be available to stream.
Okay, that's wonderful. I'll be sure to provide a link there. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us, Holly. I greatly enjoyed your film. I'm looking forward to all of our viewers and readers getting to watch it in the future. And bon voyage for your international travels. And good luck with your New York Woodstock Film Festival this week.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks so much.